Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Climate Solution That Pays Families, a local conversation on national policy. I'm April Galarza from the Keene Clean Energy Team, a grassroots group of Keene residents, businesses, and leaders from education, faith, and nonprofit and other sectors and allies from neighboring communities who have voiced their support for making energy efficiency and renewable energy options accessible for residents and businesses. We're partnering with the city to support Keene's Clean Energy Plan and facilitate outreach and engagement efforts like tonight's session.
And hi everyone, I'm Annie Henry from the Monadnock Sustainability Hub, and the Hub is a regional organization dedicated to strengthening the sustainability and resilience of the Monadnock region by working collaboratively to reach 100% clean energy. One second, I'm getting the slideshow. So today's event is brought to you by these amazing sponsors. So in addition to the Clean Energy Team and the Monadnock Sustainability Hub, we have the Citizens Climate Lobby here supporting us, the Greater Keene Chamber of Commerce, Cheshire County, and also the City of Keene to support us. So thank you to them for sponsoring this event today.
Yes, thank you. 4 former chairs of the Federal Reserve, 28 Nobel laureate economists, 15 former chairs of the Council of Economic Advisors, 2 former secretaries of the U.S. Department of Treasury, and more than 3,500 U.S. economists agree that a carbon cashback solution offers the most cost-effective lever to reduce carbon emissions at the scale and speed that it is necessary. And this is a quote from the Wall Street Journal on a statement from economists.
And tonight we'll learn why and how the solution can benefit your family, our community, and our planet.
Later, we'll hear from our 3 panelists, John Condos, the Monadnock Sustainability Board Member and Solar Expert, Marge Shepherdson from the Marlborough Energy Committee Chair, and Joel Huberman, the Citizens Climate Lobby Volunteer Monadnock Chapter. But let's start with a video.
The video is a TED Talk, and it's called A Climate Solution Where All Sides Can Win.
I hope you enjoyed the video.
Okay.
Let's hear from our panelists, starting with Joel Huberman from the Citizens Climate Lobby, a volunteer from the Monadnock Chapter.
Thank you. Can we go on to the next? Perfect. Good evening, friends. You've just heard Ted Halstead's inspiring description of a carbon fee and dividend plan. You may be asking yourselves, where did this plan come from? The answer can be found in a memoir that climate scientist James Hansen is in the process of writing. Hansen may be the most famous climate scientist alive today because of his groundbreaking scientific studies, and also because he was one of the first to speak out about the dangers of burning fossil fuels. The concept of a steadily rising carbon price in the form of a fee charged to the producers of fossil fuels was first expressed by Hansen in a public talk in November 2006. In June 2008, Hansen added the dividend concept. The idea of dividends was first proposed in 2001 by independent thinker Peter Barnes in his book entitled Who Owns the Sky? In that book, Barnes proposed modifying the cap and trade form of carbon pricing by returning the net revenue to legal residents on an equal per capita basis. Barnes called this policy cap and dividend. After learning about the dividend idea, Hansen enthusiastically promoted it in every talk he gave. Among the audience in several of these talks was Marshall Saunders, who had also been trying to solve the global warming problem. The previous year, Saunders had started the organization which he called Citizens Climate Lobby, or CCL, with the intention of lobbying Congress to pass meaningful climate legislation. When Saunders learned about Carbon Fee and Dividend, he immediately adopted it as CCL's policy. Next slide, please. Here is a brief summary of CCL. It's a nonpartisan organization which works to develop the political will to pass bipartisan climate legislation at the federal level. CCL's favorite legislative policy is Carbon Fee and Dividend, and that policy is embodied in the bill that's called the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, which is about to be reintroduced into the new House of Representatives. Next slide, please. How does Carbon Fee and Dividend work? A gradually rising fee is charged to the producers of fossil fuels, leading to higher fossil fuel prices. These encourage consumers to switch to products made with clean energy. The income from fossil fuel fees is returned to all legal residents in equal per capita dividends, or cashback. These reimburse all of us for higher prices and protect the poor. The border carbon adjustment was also envisioned by James Hansen. Countries wishing to import their products for sale in the United States will have to pay a border fee if those countries do not yet have a carbon price of their own equal to or higher than the American carbon fee. And as Ted Halstead just explained to you, the border carbon adjustment will be a powerful incentive for other countries to adopt carbon pricing policies of their own. That's how this federal Carbon Fee and Dividend legislation can bring the entire world to net zero. Thanks for your attention.
So again, welcome everyone, and great to have a chance to talk to you tonight. I want to first and foremost reiterate the power of putting a price on carbon. First of all, we're dumping these gases into our atmosphere for free, which is against the market economy that we live in. But putting a price on it has a powerful effect. We've already heard a great deal about the details. The En-ROADS Climate Simulator is an opportunity for anyone. It's free and it's available, and you'll see the links later in our presentation. Anyone can go on and look at it. It essentially allows you the opportunity to evaluate different policy solutions. So when I first discovered this a little over a year ago, I was very excited because obviously I believed in the concept of putting a price on carbon because I felt it was a powerful fundamental policy. But what really mattered to me was that it was going to, there needed to be proof for that. I mean, it's great to hear it. We've heard about all these economists and all the experts, but it's really interesting to have a tool like this that actually validates that point. And I'm pleased to report that this does that. Before I go any further, I'll offer that we at the Hub have a couple of people who've been trained as climate ambassadors by the MIT and Climate Interactive Group that put this together. And we attended trainings and passed the test and did all sorts of things so that we could become climate ambassadors. So we're able and available to help you if you would like to walk through one of these. We put workshops on. We're planning a couple of them right now for different audiences. The real point here is to say that you have a dashboard, which you can see in front of you, and this is what it looks like. And I can tell you, having not only been trained in it, but having explored it quite a bit, that the single most powerful policy option, and there are 18 here that you can see on this, if you can read the screen, is putting a price on carbon. Now, this particular simulator doesn't look at what happens to the money. That's a little more complex than this can engage in, but it looks at the policy's ability to reduce temperatures at the end of the century. That's what the whole model is based on. And you can, I'd be happy to walk you through it in a workshop. We don't have time tonight, obviously, but the point is you can see for yourself what works and what doesn't. And I'm a solar guy. I've been working on solar all my life. I love solar energy, and I'd love to be able to say that the renewables button will do it, and it won't. I'll also add that there's no single lever that will move the temperatures to the degree we need to. In other words, to get under 2 degrees C. So the point is, this tool helps you to understand what combination of those will work really well. And I've just kind of given you a quick sneak preview that carbon pricing as a fundamental approach is really the most powerful. I really want to make sure that people understand that this is a very effective model. MIT obviously provides some credibility in a lot of people's minds, but they have just made a major update to this, which I'm very excited about. It was just released less than a month ago. And there's some really wonderful news in it. The scenario that we've been operating on prior to that was that we would get to 4 degrees C at the end of the century if we did, business as usual. That has now been adjusted to 3.6 degrees. So that's 0.4 of a degree C. It's almost 2 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a significant reduction. And it's really based on a variety of things that were put into the model. But one of the most exciting ones for me, again, as a sun harvester, is that solar and wind are happening faster than when the model was built a little over a year ago. And that data, the reality of the fact that the world is embracing solar faster and wind faster, has been incorporated into the model as fact, as science. And as a result, they've been able to say, it looks like we just shaved a little bit off of the really bad news if we just keep business as usual. Ultimately, we obviously need to do more, and this tool helps you to understand that. So again, encourage you to look at it yourselves. Contact us and Annie if you'd like to participate in a workshop. We will walk you through it and help you to understand why some of these things happen, like why won't renewables do it by themselves, or energy efficiency, and we can spend a lot of time on it. So anyway, thanks very much for your attention, and I look forward to a solution that puts a price on carbon as soon as possible.
And our final panelist this evening is Marge Shepherdson from the Marlborough Energy Committee.
Thanks, April. I'm going to talk to you about the Carbon Cashback Coalition. I'm going to start with I'll look at the federal level. There's a carbon fee and dividend bill in Congress, as you just heard, but many states aren't waiting for that to work its way through a slow process. Most of the New England states, including New Hampshire, had a bill last year to impose carbon fee and dividend policy at the state level. And while ours didn't pass, we mobilized to get support for that. And a group of citizens and legislators wanted to educate the public and build support for both the state and the federal bill. So we created a group called the Carbon Cashback Coalition. And next slide, please. And why bother doing this? Because a Yale study shows that 25 to 30% are alarmed about climate change in this country. 70% want action. And a recent poll also shows that about 70% of the population is in support of putting a price on pollution, which is what this policy does. So we thought if we could get towns to pass a resolution on their town warrant, then we could take that information to show our legislators that we are supporting them. Last year, we got it on the ballot in 40 towns, and 28 of them, or 70% of them, passed it. This year, we're working on 60 more towns. And if you haven't yet seen it come to your town, you might want to get involved in this. It's not too late. Next slide, please. How would you go about doing it? First, you copy the petition from the carboncashback.org website, collect 25 signatures, and turn them into your selectman's office by February 2nd. The other part that you need to do is be prepared to speak at the town meeting in support of the article. And it would be helpful to have a few friends or supporters there to back you up, because often you get people at the town meeting who, after you've presented it, would speak against it or say, why do we want to do this? It's just a tax. And it helps to have others there besides yourself to try to explain why this is such a helpful policy. Next slide, please. If you can't get the town warrant, resolution on your town warrant, if you don't feel you have enough time to collect signatures, for example, there are a couple of other options. The warrant article is the first option, but you could also decide to ask your Board of Selectmen or City Council to endorse the federal bill, the EICDA that we have already talked about. Or you could ask your mayor to endorse the EICDA. And for doing that, they would go to the Citizens Climate Lobby website, and there'd be a place to endorse it directly on the computer. The Citizens Climate Lobby is looking for endorsements, both grassroots endorsements, which the town meeting would provide, or grass tops endorsements, which would be important people like your legislators, your mayor, businessmen, people who run businesses. So all of it is helpful, and we encourage people to go any of these routes. Next slide, please. Some people would like to know about the impact on their household. You heard in the TED Talk that the impact is starts at about 36 cents per gallon of gas, and also that first year you would get back over $800. You'd get, a family of 4 would get $2,000 roughly back from their dividend. That more than pays for the 36 cents per gallon that you're going to buy for your gas or your heating oil. You can see how it affects you, particularly by going and trying out the what's on the screen, the energyinnovationact.org/carbon dividend calculator. Put in your own family information about how much you spend, what kind of fuel, and it will tell you how much you would be affected by this. The good news is it would reduce carbon emissions all by itself by 40% in 12 years. When added to the renewable energy projects and the energy efficiency that's being done, weatherization, then we would be able to reach our goal and start turning back the effects of climate change. For more information, you can go to carboncashback.org, and anybody in this organization will be happy to help you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, panelists, for sharing that great information. And now is the audience chance to ask your questions about this legislation and how it may impact your community and your family. So put those in the chat box, and we will start off. April and I will ask the panelists some commonly asked questions. So April, if you want to take it away with those.
Yep, certainly. Our first question is it a tax?
And
okay.
yeah. So since no one else is speaking up, I will be happy to start off on the answer to that question. According to the dictionary, this carbon fee is not a tax. A tax is a solicitation of funds from people for the purpose of increasing government revenues. This, when we give all of the money back to citizens, we're not increasing government revenues. So by the dictionary, it's not a tax.
Thank you, Joel. Is this an example of income redistribution? That's another common question that's asked.
I'd be happy to talk about that, Annie. This is not income redistribution. We're not giving from the rich to give to the poor, for example. Everybody gets the same dividend check, no matter how much they earn, no matter how much they spend on fossil fuels. Everyone gets the same. And if you think about it, that you're going to get the same amount back, it really encourages you to use less fossil fuel, because then you're going to have more money left over to spend on your favorite things. You don't have to spend it on fossil fuels.
We have one more frequently asked question, and then the questions are pouring into the chat box, and I'll be happy to moderate them. Our last frequently asked question is, how will it impact my family?
I take this one only because it's so much fun for a sun harvester. If you happen to have a PV system and drive an electric vehicle, you're going to win big time. But if you're an average family and you have 1 or 2 cars and one of them, say, gets really lousy gas mileage, it's going to have a little bigger impact. And it might encourage you to have at least one of those vehicles be a higher miles per gallon vehicle, and then the impact will be reduced because you'll be paying less for your fossil fuels. Likewise, it's going to encourage people to do things more efficiently, wasting less energy. Idling will be something people won't do as commonly as they unfortunately still do now because they'll think a little bit more about it. But the beauty of it is that the fossil fuel industry isn't going to just jack prices up completely because they want to keep pumping this as long as they can. So there's a lot of discussion amongst economists that prices may not rise quite as fast as some of the predictions say, so that in fact, prices may not rise and families may actually really do much better. As the analysis said earlier, and it's been validated by a number of variations, lower income people tend to do the best because their carbon footprints are lower. If you have multiple homes, if you fly or even have your own airplane or have multiple cars and use them a lot, it's going to have a bigger impact on you. But if you have 1 or 2 cars and you live in a modest home, the impact is going to be the fee, the dividends will offset the increased costs. And I think they'll actually be much better than even some of the models because I expect the fossil fuel industry to be very competitive for a while trying to keep prices down. But that's speculation.
Thank you. Our first question is, will this be combined with setting emission levels? And are the oil companies supporting these bills in Congress?
I would like to comment on there is support by several prominent oil companies, including ExxonMobil, for a price on carbon, not necessarily this specific legislation.
And I'll add to that, one reason they might support it is they and other large businesses like predictability, and having this fee, they know what to expect. This is what it is this year. Next year it's going to be $10 more. Next year $10 more. It helps them with their long-term planning.
Yeah, and I will add that ExxonMobil and several other oil companies have formally endorsed the plan put forth by the Climate Leadership Council. That's the plan that Ted Halstead was speaking about in his TED Talk. It's very similar to the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. So I think, although I don't know that ExxonMobil has formally supported the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, I suspect that they might. Yeah, okay, enough on me, enough of that.
Excellent. Our next question is, has anyone approached the Keene Mayor or City Council about this resolution?
Oh, I'd be happy to talk about that. Yes, we are working on the Keene City Council. It has gone to the Keene Energy Climate Committee, and they've discussed it, and they're going to present it to the Keene City Council, I believe, in the next month. And there is already, we know there is some support on the council to pass this resolution.
Our next question is, could a carbon cashback fund be placed in a trust and used for conservation or climate mitigation?
Let me take a quick shot at it, and Joel, I mean, not to take your thunder, but the idea of this is by giving it back to the people, it will do a number of things, but the most important one is it engages everyone in the process. So those who would be opposed to doing this at all because they just love fossil fuels are going to go, yeah, but I'm getting this nice dividend. So everybody's on board. It's going to reduce opposition. And if we think of the yellow vests that occurred in in France, those protests were because of a rise in the price of diesel fuel. This would offset
without
that.
Getting a dividend.
Right. The dividend really makes the difference. So by putting it in a fund or doing something else with the money, that's mitigated. You lose that power. And I think that's an important part of the dividend. The dividend is really the key to this. And right now, in the wake of the pandemic, there's a lot of talk about getting money to people. This does it without raising the national debt. And it solves this huge problem we have. So I can't believe that we haven't done this already. And I'm very hopeful that it will happen very soon.
And I want to point out that there's no reason why this carbon fee and dividend plan or carbon cashback plan can't work in cooperation with other plans that would, for example, provide stimuli to renewable energy or stimuli to energy efficiency. All of that can be done simultaneously, and all of those things work together synergistically.
Excellent. We've got a lot of questions, so let's keep it rolling. Is this presentation being recorded? It is something I could share with my state representative. And I can answer that question. Yes, it is being recorded. The next question is, who would monitor whether the policy is not being abused by companies?
That's a difficult question to answer because I don't understand what the questioner is thinking of when he's thinking of abuse by companies. This is a policy that affects two kinds of people. One kind of person is the owner of a fossil fuel producing company or fossil fuel importing company. There aren't very many of those. They're easy to regulate, easy to deal with. The other kind of person is a citizen or legal resident who gets a dividend. Other aspects of company policy are irrelevant.
Maybe I could just add a moment to that. I mean, there are about 3,000 entities that would be the primary folks that would be taxed. This is done at the well, the mine, or the port of entry. So it's not everyone who's getting the fee it charged to them. It does have implications for small businesses. The price of their gasoline is going to go up, and they're not necessarily, they're going to have their homeowner, citizen rebate, but that may not cover their business costs. So there are going to be some inflationary effects from this, but I go back to my point before, following the energy industry very closely for decades. I don't foresee, given that there's a glut of fossil fuels on the market right now, that you're going to see those dramatic price increases. Some of those price increases will be mitigated by competition to keep pumping as long as they can, because with the price going up every year, there's no incentive to just recover all your profits. So I think it's actually going to have a negative impact on the profitability of some fossil fuel producers. And I think they're already that's being acknowledged in the stock market right now because of the fact that the Biden administration has already said it's going to do something about climate change, finally.
Next question is, if the extra money we spend on, say, gasoline is returned to us, then where is the incentive to use less fossil fuel?
April, I'd like to take a stab at that. If you spend extra money on higher priced gasoline and then you get the money back, then you're even. But if you have an electric car powered by your solar panels, you still get that check back and you didn't have to spend it on gasoline. So you've now got this check to spend on going to the movies or buying something you like. So it should be an incentive for people to get off fossil fuels.
Can I just add one thing? I think that this has a much bigger implication beyond the individual, and you have to take that into consideration. The price on carbon will signal investors that they have to get out of dirty fuels and they have to support clean energy. So the support for photovoltaics, clean energy storage, wind, et cetera, will be enormous on an investing level, which will cause this whole transformation to happen at a much faster rate. But at the end of the day, homeowners who button up their homes or get more efficient are going to save money because they won't be as exposed to the rising price of fossil fuels. So it's going to encourage energy efficiency and clean energy on the individual level as well.
If I could add to that, John, another benefit would be, you look at, suppose you need more fuel in New Hampshire. We don't produce our own fuel. We have to import some kind of fuel. So you're considering building a new gas pipeline to get more gas into the state. But you see this carbon fee coming along, and that's going to make your gas more expensive. Maybe instead you decide to invest in offshore wind or solar energy. So as you said, it should help us switch the whole energy field.
Kind of related to the next question, which is, what are the fossil fuel companies doing to stop polluting and destroying the environment? Doesn't this just shift the responsibility away from holding them accountable?
I mean, I think they are accountable because they're going to have to start bearing an increased cost of their goods because they're going to be paying fee. So every pound of coal or every gallon of oil is going to have an increasing cost. Every year it's going to cost more. So fossil fuels will decline as a result of that. I mean, the fact is that solar is already competitive with natural gas and has eclipsed the price of coal a long time ago. I mean, and no one is putting in new coal plants in the United States, at least, because the market doesn't justify it, even though we have an abundance of coal. Unfortunately, it is still happening in some developing countries, but the economics of solar has already eclipsed it. So, you know, we're watching an energy transition that's going to be accelerated by this, and we'll still get plenty of energy. We're just going to get it from cleaner sources.
Next question is, what agency is going to be analyzing and calculating what type of fee is going to be levied against any given high carbon producing industry?
Well, it's going to depend on how much carbon dioxide that fuel puts into the air when you burn it. So gas, coal, oil, and those figures are already known. So I don't know which agency is in charge of it. Maybe one of the other panelists does, but there is a fee based on how much carbon is emitted when that type of fuel is burned.
I don't know either precisely which agency is in charge of this, but I do know that the agency is named and charged with this responsibility in the current version of the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. I recommend reading the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. You can find it in congress.gov. It's a detailed and well thought out bill, and every aspect of this policy, from collecting the fee from fossil fuel companies to distributing the dividend to citizens, to calculating how much the fee should be, to dealing with side issues such as other greenhouse gases that aren't produced by burning fossil fuels. All of those are covered in this bill. It's a comprehensive piece of legislation, but it's not complete. As John pointed out, much more is needed, and I want to emphasize again that other policies complement this policy. Do not try to assign total responsibility for solving the climate problem and all social problems on this one bill. Multiple bills will be needed.
And that's a great ad for the En-ROAD simulator. It helps you to see that and to see which combination works most effectively, or at least try to come up with the best options. But that's one of the beauties of the simulator. It'll help you to understand that part. There's no longer, we've waited too long. There's no longer a silver bullet. We need silver buckshot, as we sometimes refer to it, meaning a series of policies. But I go back to putting a price on carbon is a foundational, fundamental, and the most powerful tool in the toolbox that we have.
The next question is, how does industry measure the carbon tax? And taxes in quotes here.
Industry. The fossil fuel industry will be really easy. What happens is, and I mean, I have a family member in the concrete business, which is a very big source of carbon emissions. So there's already a lot of work being done, both in the building community and in the concrete industry, to look at how do we address that. So looking at that one example, there's already a lot of work going into how to fix that one very greenhouse gas intensive industry. It's going to affect industries differently. Those that can't find ways to reduce their carbon footprints are going to be challenged economically. Doesn't mean they're all going to go away, but just like horse and buggies and buggy whip manufacturers went away, things will change, and some industries will benefit and some will not. But those in the concrete industry who can figure out, and there are some cool things coming that I read about that may solve some of that high greenhouse gas content, the ones who adopt that first are going to be the winners. And the ones who sit back and go, now I'll just keep making my concrete the same old way, you know, they're probably not going to be too successful long term.
The next question is, Mr. Halstead said everyone wins and that he and his supporters met with the current administration 4 years ago. Why has it not come to be? How to convince fossil fuel companies that this is advantageous?
I'm just going to make a very personal comment here. I probably shouldn't say this, but I am so glad that the current president didn't see the beauty of this, because I feared that the dividend would become so popular that he'd be reelected for life. This is going to be a big win, and I just trust that Joe Biden will be the guy who will do it, because it's going to be very, very popular once it's done.
Next question is, what other New England states, if any, have adopted this legislation? And what did the rollout look like?
I'll be glad to answer that. Massachusetts is the farthest along. They actually have a bill for a state carbon fee and dividend, which looks like it has passed. I believe it's passed the House and now it's in the Senate. So none of the New England states has a policy yet, but they're working on it. Last I knew, Rhode Island was working on it, but they said theirs was contingent on at least 2 other New England states doing it, so they weren't all alone. So the governors are talking to each other about this. I would add that it's out of New England, but just to the north of us, Canada has now adopted a countrywide carbon fee and dividend policy. Some of the provinces already had their own version, and if they're good enough to pass the new level of that's mandated by the federal bill, then they can keep theirs. But otherwise, they have to adopt the new federal carbon fee and dividend. So it's been very successful in British Columbia. People like getting their dividend, and it's making a difference. And they are starting to talk, and Europe is also starting to talk about doing this. And both of them would put a border adjustment fee on it. So we would be on the bad side of that border adjustment unless we do something.
I might add that the carbon fee and dividend, or carbon fee and reimbursement policies, plural, that have been present in parts of Canada, at least for more than a decade, have proved to be quite popular and have allowed the governments proposing them to be reelected time and again.
One last word about this. We don't have an actual carbon fee and dividend bill in New Hampshire in this new session, but Representative Oxenham has filed a bill to say when there's a federal carbon fee, we need a study now to see how that will affect New Hampshire, New Hampshire's businesses, New Hampshire's farms, etc., and be prepared to move in the direction that will not be hurt by this federal carbon fee and dividend, but be ready to take advantage of it. So I would encourage you to be on the lookout for that, and either testify or let your representative know when it's time for the hearings on that bill, how you feel about it.
We are getting close to time, so I think we're going to have to wrap up on the Q&A. However, we have all of your questions in the chat here and your names, and we will get back to you with answers. So if you're wondering what you can do, some ideas came up tonight, but the full details and links are on our website, and we'll share a link in the chat. For individuals, you can tell Congress you support the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act by writing a personalized letter using a template from the Citizens Climate Lobby. You can also send the Clean Energy Team a copy of your letter so we can demonstrate local support.
And if you live in a town other than Keene, consider helping your town to sign a resolution or have one of your select board members endorse the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. And again, details on how to do this and how you can get help are all on the Clean Energy Team's website.
For businesses, nonprofits, and other organizations and influential leaders, we're collecting endorsements from individuals, businesses, nonprofits, and organizations to demonstrate local support for state and federal level policy. Details on how to endorse are on our website.
And stay tuned for an upcoming New Hampshire legislative session on carbon cashback in 2021, and join the Clean Energy Team's mailing list, and we'll keep you informed.
And all this and more can be found on our website, cleanenergykeene.com/carbon cashback. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions. Check the chat for the URL and an email to contact us. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yes. Thank you so much. And remember, you can email me at ahenry@monadnocksustainabilityhub.org with any questions about tonight's presentation, or if you want any of the resources that we've shared or have any further questions for the panelists, I'm happy to get you in touch with the right resources.